How's it going, guys? If you haven't seen the previous videos that I've made on this bike, you're going to want to go back and check those out just so you know what I'm working with here. Make sure to subscribe to the channel as well to keep updated on this series because it's going to keep moving on for a while. Today we are starting on something that I've wanted to do since the day I got it. We are going to be ripping the carburetor out of this bike. I don't know right now if I'm going to change it or if I'm going to try to fix the one that we've got going on here. I think it's clogged because you may have heard in some of the earlier videos with it running, it has an inconsistent idle, which points towards pilot jetting problems, and you haven't really seen it, but I've had some issues at full throttle with this bike, which points to main jetting, so I think there's a lot of clogging going on, and I hope that's it. I may need to change some things. I know, and I've tried adjusting the mixture screw. In the case of this bike, it's a fuel mixture screw. The idle hasn't changed at all, so there's definitely some clogging going on, and there's a chance that we may be able to get this thing to run reasonably with its existing carburetor. I want to spend as little as possible on this because, well, I've got some other plans that require some funds. So in order to get to the carburetor on this bike, which is an Apollo 250 RX or DB36, whatever you want to call it, I have to take these panels off, and I'm going to take them off on both sides. The seat as well is going to come off, the gas tank will come off, and I believe that's it. There's a few other odds and ends. I'm also going to be examining the airbox because air and fuel are both equally important in making this bike run well. The carburetor is right behind this. I don't know if I can show you. The carburetor is kind of right behind this big thing right here. So I'm going to try to get as much stuff out as possible. It's pretty hard to get to that carb. So without further ado, let's tear this thing back down. Alright, now I can start taking the panels off. So first, I got all the bolts out. There was 1, 2, 3 in the front panel, 1 in this middle panel, and 1 here on this back panel, which also holds in the seat, and it's mirrored on the other side, of course. So you pick this up, push down a little bit on this part, and it pulls. You'll see. I don't want to be too mean with it, because this is holding on to the gas tank, which, as we know, cracks pretty easily. There you go. That little screw there hooks in here, and then this part hooks in the center, and then these two are held down by the screws. So underneath here, there's these panels, which just lift off. Center panels kind of just fall out, and then the tail here won't come off until you get these 2 bolts out, which are underneath the seat, so you need to take the seat off to get to them. I'm going to leave them in right now because I don't really need to remove them right now. The gas tank is held in by 2 bolts, 1 here and 1 down here, which you saw in the previous video, so I won't go over that again. I'll come back to you when this thing is taken apart a little bit more. Alright, so now I'm going to do something a little different than I did last time taking this tank off. It makes a lot more sense. Turn the petcock off so there's no fuel able to flow through it. Take it off here and remove this fuel line, and then you don't have to drain the tank and get as much gas everywhere. There's still going to be a little bit probably that comes out of here, but I don't think it'll be nearly as bad. There we go. Popped it loose. Perfect. Cool. Now, let's see if we can spill a little bit less this time. I don't know if there will be any gas because this has been chilling for a while. A little bit. Not too bad. I did remember to have a rag handy this time. So while that's soaking up, this guy can now come off. Alright, so fuel tank is off. I've got the fuel filter and the little petcock here, so everything should stay together. I don't have to do anything else with this right now. Okay, and now, I don't know if you can see, but there's the carburetor. I think I want to get this guy out of the way. So, just pop this off. I think this is a PCV-esque thing. So this is as good of a view as I can get you right now. So this is the throttle cable. This is what goes to your grips. There's a spring under here, and I'm not sure how tight it is, so just want to be careful removing this thing. There's some delicate parts in here, I believe, but it just screws off pretty much. And there's the spring, and let's disconnect this here so we got a little bit more room to move. There we go. And there's the needle. Okay. There's a throttle cable inside. Pressing the spring quite a bit, actually. I'm not sure if that's typical. I don't know if you can see, but there's a little hole right here. That's where the end of the throttle cable is set into, which is this little braided wire inside of the spring. The spring's actually under pretty good tension right now, which is interesting. Twisting the throttle right now, you can see it compressing. Throttle never really snapped back, but it's not terrible. But cool. I'm gonna set this aside for now. Try not to damage anything here. I'm actually gonna move this completely out of the way here. I'll clean everything up before I reinstall it anyways. So there's the top of the carb. Good. I'm gonna go get some rags so I can start plugging up holes, because we're gonna be opening up all kinds of things here. It would be better to have lint-free paper towels, which I don't have with me right now. It's always something, right? Always something with me. But this will hopefully keep it a little safe. Alright, so now we're going to start taking this apart even more. I do not have good lighting, so I'm going to hit you with a flashlight. I've got... Ooh, yeah, you can't really see that. Okay, there's one bolt, or nut actually, and this is a stud coming through that's hold on to. There's one on the other side as well. You probably can't see. Let's move you there. There it is. So you can see both of those. I'm going to take those off first, which is going to loosen the carb. Then I'm going to go back here and remove this guy right here, which is the, I guess you could call it the intake manifold, which goes right to the engine. And that should give us enough wiggle room to get this out of here. Alright, so I haven't recorded a whole lot of this so far because it's not very exciting. It's a lot of fiddling around and awkward places that I can barely get to, much less film. So I'm getting the bolts out of the intake manifold is what I'm going to call it, although I don't know if that's actually what it technically is. You're going to notice when I get all this stuff out, one of the studs actually came from the intake manifold and the nut stayed there. So I'm going to have to fix that and get the stud back in. But I should be able to pull this guy right out. There's a little gasket, a rubber gasket right here. It goes between this and the carb. I'm going to pull off this line just to make it a little easier. That line goes, let me show you, that line goes from here all the way up to this little circuit, which I can only imagine is some sort of crankcase ventilation. But obviously I don't know exactly what the right term for it is. Curious to see if this happens to be plugged up. Nope, that's straight through. So that's where the stud came out. I'm gonna have to get that back in, but they do screw right in and then bottom out on this little thicker flat section. So it shouldn't be a huge issue. I can jam some nuts together and put them in like everyone does. So next, the carb should come out. So I don't lose my bolts, I'm going to be putting them back in. I'm actually screwing this back into the engine just loosely. I'm not torquing it down or anything, just so I know where everything goes, because there's a lot of nuts and bolts and washers and spacers and things that are going to be coming out here today, and I don't want to put it together wrong after all this work gets done. So I'm going to take a clean rag, shove it into the engine, not far, but just so that nothing will go in there. And now I've got to disconnect the airbox, so I'm guessing I'm going to need a screwdriver. I'm going to get this guy out of the way here, and then carburetor should be loose. And make sure there's a few other vacuum lines, but should more or less come out now. Okay, carb is out. Yep, no vacuum lines, just looks like a overflow line and the fuel line. This, oh boy, it's dripping a little bit. Right, so this bad boy right here is the piece that everybody hates on these bikes. You can see it is a, what's called, oh gosh, I forget what it's called. Basically the style is it just throttles this guy up and down to change the mixture. This butterfly valve here is only for the choke. I'm going to want to look at fuel bowl, which is this guy under here. Take these bolts out. This right here is a fuel mixture screw. I'm going to have to check on that. And then I'm going to want to make sure that one of these is the idle air jet thing, or maybe both, I'm not sure, but these are oftentimes what will make the bike idle wrong if they're plugged up. And then I'm going to look at the idle jet and main jet, which are in here. So we'll take this apart on the workbench. Alright guys, time to do some surgery. So we're going to move this out of the way. I got the stud installed again. I kind of did it, I guess, the wrong way. I clamped this wider portion here in a vise very lightly, but it was enough that I could get the nut unstuck, and then I threaded it back in and used some vice grips to very lightly grab onto this and just tighten it into here. It's not going to be permanent. I'm going to go back and make sure it's properly set in, but for now everything's here, everything's together. I'm not going to lose anything or forget how it goes together. So setting this aside, oh, here's our carb. We already kind of looked over it before. I need to go get a drain pan again because there's still some fuel in this bowl here, and when I take it out it's going to dump everywhere if I don't have somewhere to catch it. So I'll be right back. Alright, and we're back. I've got a little bit overkill of a pan here, but it'll get the job done. I want to try to drain this without taking this off. I think this screw right here controls it, maybe. It looks like it might have something to do with it. So I'm going to back that out first and see what happens. Let's see if we can break this guy loose gently. Yep, there we go. Okay, it's loose. Just going to unthread it by hand. Yep, there we go. The rest of the fuel is draining out of the bowl, so I'm just going to loosen up a little bit more. I'm going to tighten this guy back up a little bit just so he doesn't fall out. I'm sorry I'm holding it so high. I'm trying not to soak this overflow line in the gas. So now it is 4 Phillips head screws and the fuel bowl will come off. I'm going to be real careful I don't strip these out because I want to try to reuse this carb. Firm press, and there we go. Easy. Firm press. Easy. Alright, now, just to be on the safe side, I'm going to bring this pan back here. Yeah, I can feel there's some gas coming out of this thing. So there's my 4 screws. Carb bowl comes off. There's the rest of the gas. So there you go. There's the bowl, and there's some of the guts. So now, let's go back to here, wipe this off. Let's take a look first in the bowl. So there is some crud in here. I don't know if you can see it, but there is actually a little bit of debris. That looks like it made it past the fuel filter. It appears to be dirt. So, seeing that there, we more than likely have clogged jets. And this is interesting right here. If you look down in here, this is where that drain is. There's something going on there. It's really hard to see, but there's some like reddish stuff on this side of that hole. So there may be something going on here. Let's take a look at our bowl, or not our bowl, our floats. So when these are properly adjusted, they should, there's a little line here, it should sit parallel with this when held this way, when under, when it's just sitting here. And they appear to be, maybe they're a little low, but it does start to shut off that valve right as they're, it does start to shut off that valve right as they're parallel. There's a little pin here that holds it in. It's just loose, so just, be gentle with it. Oops. Wish I had my punch with me. Gentle with it, push it out, and just slide that thing right out. Boom. There are your floats. And as you can see, the gasket expanded to larger than the size of this. So we're going to have to do our little shrink thing to make it fit again. But these are reusable. Now we've got access to our jets. This little guy right here is the pilot jet. This is what runs to about quarter throttle, I believe, maybe half throttle. And when you really open it up, that's when the main jet, which is this guy, starts working as well. Right here is a fuel mixture screw. In this case, it's a fuel mixture screw. Some bikes have air. Let's take this guy out first, because these can cause a lot of problems. And I should say as well, I previously said that this carburetor was the same model that came on the bike, and it very well could be, but I just noticed it says Mikuni right here, which is one of the known common replacement carbs for these bikes. So somebody did replace it, but it looks like they might have gotten a better one. So let's be very careful and pop this fuel screw out. It's not tight in there, and it shouldn't be. I do believe there's a spring behind this, so I'm just gonna gently hold it to make sure nothing goes flying. But I do want to get this guy all the way out. Yep. Okay, that's good news. So this little tip right here, if you we'll see when we put this back together, you have to very, very lightly tighten this down, and a lot of times if you tighten it a little too much, that tip will break off. And I'm glad to see that that's intact, because that means that that's not exactly our problem. It probably was just a tuning problem with this carb. Now we've got our pilot jet, push down, and it's free. Very easy. You should be able to see a very small pinhole through this jet. I'm just going to look through it at light, and I can see a very, very tiny pinhole through this. I'm still going to run through all of this stuff with carb cleaner, but it does appear that this jet is in good shape. Next is the main jet, which is a two-piece system. Sometimes it comes out together, as it does right here, and then you just get a wrench on here and take out the actual end of the jet. I'm just going to look through this one, and that one's clear as well. So our jets, I mean, they're in working order. Whether or not they're the correct size is to be determined, but they do appear to be in good shape. Oh man, this is going to be damn near impossible. Oh, there we go. I forgot about the spring. Thank God it didn't go flying somewhere. That's a spring that goes under the fuel screw, so that's out now. So, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. There's a very tiny set of holes here, or a very tiny single hole right there. You can see a little black dot. The fuel screw lets fuel come in through there, and it bypasses the whole circuit when the bike's just idling. Just picked up some of these, so we're going to lay this out on something a little better. Alright, so since I'm not going to be getting to the jets and all the little parts right away, I'm going to put them in a plastic bag, and we will come back to them in a minute. I think I'll take the choke lever off. So currently I have it set so that it's not resting on this lever that it actuates, which is the setting on this little thing farthest this way. There's 1, 2, 3. You got half choke and full choke on this bike. So I will try to take this off. This should lift off, and I think this guy will come right after it. So let's see. Nice and easy. So remember, it's the farthest one this way, so that we can set it back up the right way. This guy comes off. Then this guy comes off, and there's a washer underneath, a pretty thick little, looks like maybe a brass washer. I'm not seeing much else I want to take out other than potentially this guy. Let's see how much stuff is here. If it becomes a little overwhelming, I'll just leave it be. Little screw, tiny little screw, and then this little, looks like a little locking ring comes out. Little clip here comes out, and this guy comes out. That looks spotless, absolutely spotless. Just a little bit of fuel left in there. I want to get all this gas out because there could be crud in some of it, which has been making this thing run funny the whole time. But I do think it might have just been a mixture screw adjustment because it had a lean idle. So, I think it's carb cleaner time. I'm going to try not to get this on camera, and I'm going to be wearing these, and there's a door open, good ventilation. I'm going to do this inside because it's easier and it's cold outside right now. So, put this, I'm going to leave these guys out because these are getting reassembled first. I'm going to bring this guy, and I'm going to zap that hole right there. Yep, came out of the fuel filler right here. There we go. I'd say that's pretty good. Spray out this whole area. Spray out where the main jet is. Spray out where the pilot jet, or the fuel screw, I mean, is. And the other orifices I can find. That looks pretty good. Let's get it in here, in these little holes. Spray off the outside of this thing as well. Don't want any of this finding its way into the carb when I put it back together. Stuff feels really weird on your gloves. Alright, I'm satisfied with that. Let's put this guy down, let the carb cleaner evaporate. So as you can see, carb cleaner is a little hard on rubber or things of the sort. So I want to make sure any rubber seals or anything clean it off pretty well, because pretty quickly messes stuff up. Alright, let's finish up with this carburetor. So I've got the main body right here. Off camera, I sprayed out the fuel bowl and I took out the screw here. I'm going to call it the overflow bypass screw. I'm not sure what it really is, but the end of it was really rusty. So I gave this part in here a good shot. It's not perfect, but I can't really get in there with anything to like scrub it out. So I'm hoping it will just stay reasonably okay. I took this one with a Scotch-Brite pad and just kind of gave it a little buffing, cleaned it up. It looks pretty good now compared to what it was before. So we're gonna start putting a couple things back together, and then we're gonna clean out the jets to make sure that they are as clean as possible. I'm not sure how these videos are going to be sequenced, but I'm filming this one at the same time as me taking the airbox off the bike. That's a whole ordeal, which I didn't film most of because it was really annoying. But anyways, overflow tube, it's just going to slip back on here. There we go, perfect. Everything in this is ready. All we need to do is bolt this back up to the carb body, so I'm going to set that aside as well. Now we're going to just clean up and reinstall the choke a little bit. I gave the whole body of the carb a good cleaning, which is this right here. Definitely got some gunk out. Everything looks pretty nice, actually. I'm going to reinstall all the stuff in the choke mechanism, which is on this side right here. Take our little brass washer, slide that bad boy on there. Take our choke lever thingy, slide that on top. Now we take this guy. Remember, it was on the setting furthest this way to make it do its thing. It's got a slight bend to it, kind of bending this way. You want it to face down so it puts tension on that little ball there that holds it in its position. Thread it in. I'm just going to lightly seat it for now. And then I'm not really going to torque it, but I'm going to give it a good snugging. Okay, that works. Cool. No choke, half choke, full choke. Okay, now for the jets, I'm just going to take some carb cleaner, put it in the end, and give it a little spritz. You can see there's, I don't know if it showed up on the camera, but someone was shooting out of there, which means that this thing's clear. And this is the pilot jet, which has a really, really small hole, so that's good. It's good, it means that this thing's clear. Now we'll take the main jet. I want to take this down a little bit more. Vice grips probably aren't ideal, but I'm just going to lightly hold it with the grip, vice grips. And then we're going to take a flat blade screwdriver, good push. There we go. If you're doing this, probably use something a little nicer. I marred up surface a little bit, but that won't affect the function. Fortunately, the O-ring's still in good shape. Now we're going to zap this guy and the actual jet nozzle. And we're all clear. Alright, so there's that one gasket that goes between the carb body and the fuel bowl, and a lot of times when you take it out, it's going to be larger than the little groove and it won't fit back in properly. So what I do is I take a cup of really hot water. Make sure you're not using something you're going to be drinking out of, by the way, because you're basically leaching gas. Ouch. basically leaching gas out of here. Soak it in the water for as long as you need to. I'm not sure exactly why it works, but it does. It will slowly but surely start to get all of the nastiness out of it. Might want to agitate it a little bit, and eventually it'll shrink back down to size. Alright, time to put this thing back together. So you can see the gasket, it's not exactly the right size, but it is in the groove. The only real way to get it to a perfect fit would be probably to get a new one. But it does stay in the groove, and when we compress everything, it will stay there. So I'm happy with that. We're going to start putting all the pieces together now. Let's start with the jets. So here we've got the pilot jet, the little one. Can't mix these two up because they're different sized holes. Drop it in. Make sure the threads are engaged properly. I'm just going to turn these all until they seat for now, then I'll come back with a screwdriver and just make sure they're all snug. That's your main jet. So there's this little piece here, a little tab in the middle that pushes on the actual needle and seat, which is that little assembly there. It's kind of hard to show it to you guys, but it's that middle tab that sticks out. Now we're going to reinstall the fuel screw. This one you have to be careful with. You have to be careful with everything, but especially this one because of that little tip on it. It's very, very delicate. So you do not want to torque this down at all, but you will need to use a tool to get it all the way in there. And tighten it down only until it seats, only until you feel the slightest bit of resistance, because this is a very smooth screw going in. You should have no real resistance to you turning it. Just be very careful. There we go, it's seated. So now with it seated, it's plugging that hole. I'm going to back this out. For me, I'm going to start at 2 turns out from here. So that is a half turn. Now we're at 1 turn. Now we're at 1.5. And now we're at 2 turns out. One piece left is the bowl. Make sure the gasket is in the groove, and it is. Make sure the bowl is clean. Last chance. Gently place the bowl on top. And now we will take our screws and thread them in. I don't know if you need to do a crisscross pattern or not, but I'm just gonna play it safe. Try to tighten everything down evenly. Okay, and there is a cleaned Mikuni carb. Everything seems good. There's only one thing left to do before we throw this back on the bike. Alright guys, so now it's time to get all this stuff back on. We got the carburetor, we've got fuel line, and we've got the little intake manifold thingy. I've kept this guy here in a bag, sort of, because there's some delicate components here that are very important to the throttle response. This needle right here actually goes inside of the main jet and controls how much fuel comes out of it. So I want to make sure this thing stays fairly clean, very clean actually. I'm not going to adjust the needle position right now. If it ends up that it's not running the way I want it to, once we put it all together, but it starts and idles fine, then I will consider adjusting this. And we will take our Mikuni carb. Get ready to throw this guy on. So the side here with no flange goes, or the air goes to here, and the side with this flange goes directly to the intake, so it faces this way. I need to get some lines attached here. This, actually, we can probably put that on later, so I won't worry about it for now. there's a little stud inside here that this groove goes along. Right, needle dropped in, spring here. So now, with the choke on, you can see through here, kind of. Let's do this side. So you can see when the throttle's actuated, this guy lifts up, and that's what allows more air and fuel to flow through the carburetor. I'm going to sneak the carburetor in, and I'm actually going to close the choke to keep things a little cleaner, hopefully. This guy, with the studs coming out here, goes to the carburetor. Put this gasket on with the paper side here touching this, and the rubber O-ring interfaces with this. So let's get the lock nuts off the studs. Sorry if you can't see much right now. This is kind of hard to do. If you have a ratcheting wrench, this will be so much easier for you. Alright, well, carb is back in. So now it's just time to hook up a couple lines, and we will be done with this part. Make sure that's all the way on there. And then the next one is this little breather hose here. Snake it underneath, and it goes right on. Oh, of course the light's blocking it. There's a little brass nipple right here. This guy just comes right past here, and you can see it there. Slipped right on. That's about it. So guys, we learned a few things about this guy today. I don't know if this is going to fix things or not. We will have to wait and see, but I hope you learned something. If you did, let me know in the comments, leave a like, subscribe to my channel, stay up to date on this series. Stay tuned for the next video. We're going to be cleaning up some of this wiring here, probably cleaning the bike up a little bit as well, and we're going to throw a new intake in this thing. So stay tuned for that. As always guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope to see you again next time. This bike is really teaching me a heck of a lot, and I hope it's teaching you as well. So thanks for watching this one, and I'll see you next time.